Okay, so welcome back, everybody. Once again, this is episode 6 of the Pregame Network podcast. My name is Dan, your gracious host, joined by my co-host Anthony and friend of the show, Joe. Here to talk about video games again.
Joe almost has enough stamps on his punch card where he can be considered like a regular. You do 10 episodes in a row, and we'll consider you like an actual person.
Oh, that's just too many.
You're subhuman right now.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll go through the normal opening of this and talk about what we have been playing. Anthony, I want you to go first because I skipped right over you last time.
Oh, you're such a nice fella sometimes. I'm glad
I didn't even notice.
Back
in the corner. The hosts are talking. So I mean, I'll be honest, nothing too crazy or interesting. You noticed the other day I went back and I started a Gears 4 playthrough just because I wanted to.
Yeah.
I have projects down the line about things like how characters are handled from sequels. I want to do a little bit on that, and I feel like I just thought back to when we played Gears 5. I'm like, JD didn't really get treated all that well, but I wanted to go back to Gears 4 and experience like the beginning of the character to see what was there to begin with, what was there to ruin. Outside of that, I've been playing a lot of, fighting games. I always do. Marvel vs. Capcom, Guilty Gear, things like that. I feel like there was something else you know what? I didn't play it yet, but I did download this game called Last Train Home, which is like this RTS strategy hybrid. It's about getting a train out of a war zone. It's like an old-timey kind of thing, like World War I era, it looks like. I didn't read too much into the overall lore and setting, but the premise is you have a train which you upgrade. You have soldiers on the train that you occasionally need to stop and do strategy bits with, like a mix of an RTS and like something like an XCOM. No, that's an entirely different game. But
no, I know. I know it's a different game. I'm just making a joke.
Yeah, I know. Whatever.
Refugees, wartime.
Very true. But no, when your soldiers abandoning a war or the war's over or something, you got to get out of there. That's where I've been at. I feel like I played something else, but I'm forgetting. So I guess that's that.
All right. So Gears 4 passively and fighting games. So nothing too much has changed.
Nothing too
much. Joe, what about you? What have you been playing?
Like a decade, nothing has changed much.
Fighting games are fun.
That's okay. So for me, I mentioned in the last episode, I've been hosting a Conan Exiles server.
Right.
And I've been playing that a lot, but that's just kind of like the usual, just because I'm hosting it for me and some other people. I made a purchase the other day, and I have 13 minutes on the game. I didn't really get a chance to play it. Yeah, it's an indie game called.
It happens to me so often. I buy something,
very common practice.
I can't even remember if it was on sale. I just know it wasn't super expensive, so it wasn't like a huge purchase. I think it was like $20. It's this game called Noisha, I think, it's Noita. I was told that I was pronouncing it incorrectly, not in like a bad way. I was just like, I don't even know if this is how it's pronounced. It's a Noita.
The great thing about being American is any way that you pronounce it is the correct way to pronounce it.
In any case, I played it for 13 minutes. I found out that I have no idea what the fuck I'm doing, and then I closed the game to go play Conan Exiles because people were asking me to do stuff. So, actually, no, I'm sorry, that's a lie. That was not what happened. What happened was immediately after I purchased the game, I remembered that Mordhau got an update.
And we talked about
this. Yeah.
Yes, and then I went to go fuck around on that, and Mordhau is always a blast for me. Like it's one of those games that like doesn't have a high player count, but like it's like every time I play it, it's like it's always fun, and I just play it until like I just kind of like want to do something else typically. And but like
you can't say that for a lot of games.
Right. It's like it's kind of, well, I won't get into complaining about it, but it's like kind of the opposite the opposite experience that I had been having with Helldivers recently.
Oh god.
But
oh my goodness.
Yeah, but Mordhau is always a blast, and the new
How do you
Demon
pronounce
Horde mode.
it? The way I read it, and I pronounce it Mordhau.
I don't know.
Okay. All right.
Anthony,
Fair enough.
Anthony, this is your cue to say how it is.
Well, you're both pronouncing it the right way, even if you're pronouncing it differently, because as Americans, how we pronounce things is always the right way.
Jesus Christ.
Right. So, yeah, it is still a blast. I'm sure the combat is very hit or miss depending on your type of gameplay. I think the PvP is fun even if you die because it's kind of in the vein of like Battlefield. Although there is like a sort of like skill ceiling, a skill gap, and it has matchmaking like a rank system, but it's still primarily like server based, which honestly I prefer, but that's just my opinion. But yeah, it's still pretty like a lot of fun. And update's good.
As for me, I mean, nothing has changed drastically. I have been playing through Black Mesa, the fan reimagining of Half-Life. So this is, I've never played through Half-Life ever. I know as like a big FPS fan, it's like a cardinal sin. Bite me, but I've never played it. So
put my snide comments out, and he's already telling me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, it's because we've been friends for too long. I know what you're gonna say, and it's really good so far. I'm really enjoying it, and I'm just taking my time with it. Like I'm trying to enjoy it because I know it was like a landmark achievement when it came out, and a lot of games even now are like build off of what it created and blah 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 blah.
Well, not Black Mesa, but Half-Life does that. Black Mesa's separate from that. I don't.
No, well, Black Mesa is just like the remake, right?
You're playing the remake, like the Source Engine Half-Life like remake instead of
Yeah, so I mean,
like Half-Life 2.
We would be sitting here talking about it all day. If
Half-Life 2 is a direct sequel to Half-Life 1. Yes.
Correct.
So all I'm saying is
you're gonna have to spell this out for me.
Listen. All I'm saying is like you're saying you're attributing the reputation of the original Half-Life to a much later remake that is not the same game. That's all I'm saying.
So how similar is Black Mesa to, as far as story beats go?
So story beats are pretty similar. I would say it's about 90% the same.
Did you play through it?
I watched Joe play through it, and I watched Joe play through it. I've played it, but not like I'll pick it up, I'll play a couple chapters, and then much later I'll play. Like I played it out of order because I have more experience with the original Half-Life and the Source port and Half-Life 2. But Black Mesa is a game I've completed out of order. I've never touched Zen, which is like the other part of the game. But all I'm getting at,
Zen, you said Zen.
Yeah.
So how far have you gotten into Black Mesa?
Where am I? I am shit. Where I had to rescue a bunch of scientists from an office, and then I got past that. I mean, I'm still like relatively in the first half. I'm not like almost done or anything, but it's
right.
I'm trying to remember the last thing that I did, because like usually I'll play
probably like anomalous materials. It sounds like.
Yeah, that sounds about right. No, Hostiles. Something Hostiles, I think.
Hostiles Inbound, I believe the chapter is called.
Yeah, that's the chapter. Because like I'll play Helldivers or Destiny or something, or another game with a group of people at night, and then once I'm done with that play session, I don't usually like go back to Black Mesa or something. I'll just like watch the show or whatnot. So I've been going through it very passively, is what I'm trying to say. I haven't been like going balls to the wall, like all gas, no brakes. So I've just been very passively making my way through it. My problem is that I want to get into so many different games, but the time does not exist throughout the day.
I think what you got to do is I think you need to narrow down what you want to play to like a pool of 5, and then size up how long each one is, and then like divvy it up.
Another problem of mine is that a lot of games that I'm interested in are live service. So it's like
I get that. It's all that it's doing what it's designed to do. It's fighting for your attention. So like I said, you either need to start narrowing it down, or you need to take it literally one at a time.
I know.
Otherwise you're just going to end up with a bunch of half-started games, and I know you don't want to do that in the long run.
Yeah, because I played through and beat the second expansion or second DLC for Remnant 2. That was good, and there's just by virtue of how that game is, there's a bunch of shit to uncover, like as far as secrets and weapons and armor and everything goes. It's not a live service game, which is nice. I can go back to it whenever I want, but I played through the main storyline of the new DLC, and it was good. The problem with that game was like I don't have anybody to play with, so I just go through it solo, and then how long can I bang my head against the wall at a certain encounter that I'm not winning at?
So I wanna play Remnant so bad, but
you should. I'll play with you. It's a lot of fun. Crossplay.
It's full price right now, and it's exactly the issue that you were just describing, where it's just
Game
like
Pass,
it's a time constraint.
baby.
Is it on Game Pass?
You have Game Pass? Yeah, it's on Game Pass.
I do not.
Son of a, why did you ask that with like such enthusiasm?
No, I'm just saying because I played the first one and I was like, man, this game is pretty fun. I don't think I even ever actually beat the first one.
The three of us played
I didn't either. The three of us played it for a little bit, but that was like 5-6 years ago. Like it was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago.
Remnant 2 is a lot better. I have 105 hours.
The second Remnant game is the one we played because the first one is...
fuck yourself, Anthony. Okay, I know what you're trying to do. Shut the fuck up. And then aside from that, you know, I just kind of like live in Darktide right now. I've been really digging it lately, and I just discovered a third person mod for the game that actually works shockingly well. So that's been really cool. Let's see, that's really about it. Like I tried playing some COD recently, like the just multiplayer, and I just don't know if I could do it anymore, man.
I think the problem with Call of Duty is you once again burnt yourself out. I don't know. It's
not even like I play every day. It's been a while.
That's part of it too. I mean, you had mentioned you wanted to talk a little bit about how you just couldn't, like, with all the stuff with Call of Duty. It's just
yeah. I mean, that's like we could touch on that briefly because like I don't want to bore anybody out there, but really. Go ahead.
You may as well, just because I think we're done talking about what we played. Coming up to this. So because you mentioned it, if you want to talk a little bit about your position on that, and like how you're getting flooded with content, but also the expiration date of the game is right around the corner, so it's a lot. To take
I'm not the only guy out there that A, enjoys the game, B, has a very busy life, and I just. The time that it demands of you to do the things that I want to do, like I'm all about the mastery grind, as you know, but it's all arbitrary because when they announced Black Ops 5 or 6, whatever the fuck it's supposed to be, like everything gets reset and no one's going to be playing Modern Warfare 3, even though I actually really enjoy the Modern Warfare 3 like how it plays. So like, why am I going to grind dozens of hours for camos on guns for no one to look at it and say, ooh, that's cool. And then it's just going to reset and tell me to go fuck myself at the end of the day anyway. So,
hey, you'll be able to carry it over into Warzone, buddy pal.
It's like if they just gave it another year of breathing room, I would be okay with that.
That's something
it's just never going to happen.
We talked about either on the first or second episode. I'm just like they needed that buffer. I think they went too full steam ahead after the hard reset.
I'll tell you what really pissed me off was the way that the Modern Warfare 3 story ended.
Well, yeah, that's a
really
big thing too.
Ruffled my jimmies.
It's rustled, not ruffled. You fucking
whatever.
Jesus Christ. No, it's Modern Warfare 3. There'll be a time and a place. After all, it's dying in the fall. We can talk about it then. But there's a lot to say about Modern Warfare. Yeah. Did we go? Did we beat all of them? I can't even remember.
I think we did all of them. Yeah, I think we did all of them.
I think we did too. Yeah, but no, yeah.
I do enjoy Modern Warfare 3. I just like
it's fun to play. It's just I get that. I get that. Like, this is the first time you're kind of getting it before I do. But normally, like, whenever, like, if we're active in a Call of Duty, whenever February hits, that's where I start seeing the guillotine just like hanging above, and I'm just like, I don't know if I want to be standing nearby for much longer because that's very foreboding.
Apparently, they added in a new mastery camo in the same way that they did Obsidian in Modern Warfare 19.
Yeah,
and it's just like, why? It's so late in the game at this point. Why are you doing this?
Yeah, it's very. It's very strange to add that, especially when they're saying, oh, it's not only is it a new mastery camo, it's a prestige camo. So there's like 6 of them.
Fucking fuck off, man. Just like, I don't understand why they can't just have. COD is essentially a live service game, right? Can we agree on that?
It's pretty close to it.
It's pretty right. It's pretty close to that fit. It's pretty close to fitting that definition. Yeah. They just like they just deprecate everything every year, and like there are certain things that I just would prefer to use. I'm just ranting.
I get you. It's a rock and a hard place because on one hand you want there to always be new content and new things to unlock, but on the other hand, if the game is going to be dead, it's like you're adding things that you would love to have in a game that you want to play. Not just at launch, but a game that you want to play. Like it's like any other game receiving this kind of support, like over a half a year, like dense every 2 months content drops and stuff like that. You would be like, I love this game. I love this content. Yeah. This is amazing. But it's at the same time, like there's no other experience quite like a Call of Duty where it's just like, oh, next year this doesn't matter. Yeah.
And even like, I hate to bring it back to Destiny, but like that game has at least been going on for D2 is like almost 7 years now, and they just keep going, which is fine, you know, like they have their ebbs and their flows. I mean, their ups and their downs, but like if I wanted to go back and use a gun that I got 3 years ago, I could still do that. I can't do that with COD. It's just shitty. I don't know.
Like I said, there'll be a whole time for that kind of conversation. It's hard to do now, just while the game is still going on. But
anyway, that's my little.
There's a lot of that's a conversation for another day. Just discussing, like, once again, trying to wind back the clock and see what the proper timeline is and everything like that. But
we got that out of the way. What would you like to talk about this week?
Well, Joe's been quiet. Joe, do you have anything you want to talk about? Otherwise, I'm going to rant for like 30 minutes.
No, I mean, you could go ahead. I don't really have that much to talk about.
Get it in now while you can.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so
what would you like to rant about, Anthony?
So we'll lean into it with just like a simple thing that's been in the news that'll lead to a bigger topic here. Have you guys seen, well, I'm not even there yet, you bum. It's so I'm sure you guys have seen that Stellar Blade has been all over the headlines, more so than when we last talked about it, right? Well, like, here's not even just that, because like that's like that actually that what your kind of take on that it does feed into what I want to talk about, but. So it's been in the headlines. If you guys aren't entirely certain with the timeline, like we talked about, what you can put in a game, fan service, censorship. Basically, they said the game wasn't going to be censored, and then people said it was censored, and then people said it wasn't censored, and then people got their hands on the game and they didn't patch the game and found out that it was in fact censored.
Okay, pause,
yes.
And rewind for a second. You're saying censored. What are they censoring?
So. It's
because I haven't played it. I probably don't really plan on playing. It's not really my style of game.
So I
know what it is. Obviously, I don't live under a rock.
Yeah. So this is where it gets arbitrary, and this is why a lot of people are having the arguments. Is like certain outfits are slightly longer or have fabric covering certain areas. Like it's not one across the board thing. It's very arbitrary. Like a bunch of different costumes got small tweaks in that they are small adjustments that make you go, why did they bother, if not to just have arbitrary censorship in there or to bother people? Because it doesn't, a lot of them don't make sense with the outfits in their entirety. They just kind of serve to like, it's like, imagine you had just a fully nude person in front of you and then like a leaf was just blew in front of them and just hovered there. Like that's the kind of censorship that they added. It's very small, minute, arbitrary that makes you go, why did you bother? Why did you bother censoring it to this degree? On top of that, they also censored the blood, which is weird because it's like now it's like your character won't get coated in blood when they kill like larger enemies, which was a thing in the demo, a thing in all the trailers. I don't know if it was a performance issue. People are calling that censorship. I'm inclined to agree because it was playable. People were using it in the demo, and apparently it's also in the 1.0 version of the game. That's a whole thing too, because the physical 1.0 has everything uncensored, and the day one patch censors everything, and it looks like a rush job because all of the UI elements and some of the tutorial images contain uncensored elements that everybody's talking about. So basically that's a whole kerfuffle. My takeaway, it's very simple. The game was censored. It's really that simple. It's not a question whether it was or not. It's a matter of who's responsible for it.
And for what, to what end? Like, because it's very crude, or is it?
So so there's a
explain
whole,
like I'm five.
So you've seen the game, obviously. You know it's oozing in fan service. Like that was a big draw for the game. Like
as far you're saying fan service, as far as what, for people who like shit like Bayonetta and the
essentially like skimpy outfits.
Okay.
Fan service.
Yeah.
Shit,
Okay.
shit like that. Right. And basically like it leaned into it, which is fine. People want that kind of game. They had that whole announcement before the game came out. It said uncensored in all regions. Like they leaned into it really big, and then they caved at the last minute. And it's really a matter of whether it's Shift Up, who has had similar changes and excuses that they've given so far to another property they own, and that's a whole other thing. That's like mobile gotcha game shit, which not for me. Or maybe it was Sony, who has a track record of various games that either have a PlayStation version that is more censored than the other versions, or games that start to quietly add design changes once they enter a partnership with Sony. It's pretty obvious. Like they like Devil May Cry 5, Endless Zone Zero, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Senran Kagura, tons of games, tons of series, and even entire genres. Like they have this weird thing about visual novels. They completely crater their own Japanese studios. There's a bunch of nutty stuff. There's a lot you can say about it, but what you can't say is that it's subtle. So it's like somebody in the chain decided to censor this. Well, it's just a matter of who, and that'll come out because it's been getting a lot of traction online and people have been pushing it to their attention. It's just crazy that there's even a debate. Sony's open about it. All the people that love censorship and beg for it constantly, that see some cause to fight for, have been saying like, oh, you got to push it. And on top of that, we have tons of examples from both companies to look at. It's censorship. That's simple. Here's the thing that has kind of come to the forefront that kind of encapsulates the conversation around censorship in general. And it's, you kind of just bluntly said boobs at one point, like, almost like in a, like, and it is what it is. Some people
treat it an accident that like the art design or the style of the game is designed the way that it is.
Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm not saying like, they didn't lean into it. Like I said, they leaned into it, but I'm saying the flippant nature in which you brought that up is kind of like the flip side of how people are handling it online. Basically what happens with these conversations is that when they come up, you'll have people that immediately just take whatever side they're on and that's whatever. But the problem is that almost everyone immediately locks in with their preferences or what they're willing to accept. But that's never the discussion.
Right, well, I mean, that's like political discourse, regardless, no matter what you're talking about.
I get that.
It's just human nature.
No, I get that. But that's not the discussion here. We aren't talking about individual comfort zones or where you or I draw the line with things like gore or fan service or cultural representation or all the shit that comes up whenever censorship's the topic. It's very, very simple. Either censorship is okay or it's not. Either creative expression is important or it's not. If you don't have an absolute stance on this, and this is like the general you, not you. I get why people don't have an absolute stance on this, at least to a certain extent, because if you operate at 100% unshakable for a position on this, these people will work around the rules that you will be stuck following, and they will manipulate you and what you want but you can still spare like 90% and leave yourself like the 10% slack when they try to hit you with a gotcha when you're talking about these things. You can defend yourself with common sense. Now, if you don't have a strong stance on these things, that 90 to 100% on things like censorship and creative expression and how they're affected by modern sensibilities, ideological subversion, or corporate overreach, you're not addressing the issue properly. A lot of people they fail when the conversation reaches this point. It's a very distinct juncture. They immediately buckle because they get squeamish about visceral visuals or scantily clad women or cultural subjects. They immediately like cave. Like they'll say like, "Oh, censorship is wrong," or "You should leave these people alone," and then they just immediately, when they're hit with one of these things, they just immediately like they falter. And I get it. It's daunting in a way it shouldn't be. You will be caught off guard because you'll say, "Hey, let that guy make what he wants. Let people enjoy things." And you are immediately confronted with people online who are absolutely nuts. They're dogmatic. They're ideologically driven. These people, they're contrarians and paid shills and bots and activists and other just nasty, bad people. It's just an overwhelming force of social pressure from the outside. And on the inside, you sometimes risk peer approval. If you have people like that in your life and give a shit about what they think, you sometimes run that risk. And you'll have these people come up to you and they'll say shit like, "Why are you so upset that they covered up the virtual women? Are you a basement-dwelling virgin? Haven't you seen a woman before? Don't you know the game still has women in it? They just covered it up a little bit. Why do you care so much?" And, they'll say shit like, "Why do you want to see violence and blood and guts so badly? Are you some kind of psychopath, some kind of violent criminal? Why are you arguing that this feminine character is a crossdresser? What are you, gay? They're clearly a trans woman. Do you hate trans people? They exist, you goddamn bigot." Like, it's like every single topic, they just have this they just have this immediate phrase that they jump to. Like, you'll say censorship is bad, and then they'll just go nuts. They attack your presumed character, they attack your person, they imply things about your reputation and good standing, they'll threaten you at the slightest bit of pushback. But at the end of the day, they have no standards. It's just like, thing I like, not even thing they like, but like thing they are told to like and thing they are told is good, and the thing you like is bad. And they'll ignore double standards too. Sure, Baldur's Gate 3 has multiple sex scenes and full nudity. That's a-okay, because the writers and the devs think and speak a certain way, and the character creator is very inclusive, so that's fine. You have The Last of Us 2, which essentially has a gay sex scene right in the middle of it. Like, I know that character is a woman, but that's the body of a man. But none of that matters. That's classy highbrow fiction.
It gets goddamn delts on that bitch.
Yeah, that's highbrow fiction. It gets to be that way. Your traditional experiences, your Japanese cartoon toys, those games you grew up with, they are nearly as tasteful as our artistic fiction. And if you ever want to be taken seriously, you've got to let us have our way with them. That's what these people are all about. And
like, we're just circling around back to the same thing of they hate you, everything you stand for, and you cannot have anything that you like as escapism, so go fuck yourself.
That's a big part of it.
I don't even know where to go from here.
That's a big part of it. A lot of these have the same roots, and there's a whole conversation to be like, the things that they do, like we've talked about, we've run the full gamut the last couple weeks. The things that they do is one thing. Why they do it, that's a whole other can of worms. But censorship is something I harp on for two major reasons. One, it's just not okay. I think that's pretty fair to say.
So you don't like, obviously I can tell what your stand on censorship is from based on the last 5 minutes of you ranting, which is fine. Is there any line that you would draw as far as like what you can and cannot put in a game? I guess we'll just stick to games, forget about the rest of media.
So it's tough. This is why I said, like, early on, I said, absolute stances are tough. That's why I say you give yourself that 10% leeway. Like, my stance on censorship is 90%. And 90% as in absolute 90% you shouldn't have censorship. That 10% there is just there for unforeseen gotchas or situations where culture doesn't necessarily carry the slack. Because optimally, when you have just a good social fabric, you have a good creative culture, and you have people doing things in earnest, you don't have to worry about things that are unsavory or nasty or terrible, because when those things come up, they're done in earnest. You know that it's not meant to manipulate you or people or the culture. Like it's what everybody says about everything in real life. Censorship shouldn't be necessary at all. You should just, if you have a bad idea, if you do a bad thing, society should just reject it if it's that bad, but you're free to do it. And I say when I say rejected, I don't mean in the way that like everybody else does, where it's just like, oh, you should be like, this is kind of dying out to an extent, but like canceling. I'm not saying cancel these people. I'm saying society, like we should have a society that like when it sees something like that, it's not moved by it. Like just let people have their experiments be, as long as they're in earnest. Because you say, you know, what's the limit to what you can put in a game? There's some I don't want to say nasty, because it's all subjective, but there's some shit out there, you know, on various topics that, you know, have, you know, like very violent, just games that are just there to, like, you know how there's like torture porn movies where it's literally just watching people.
I know
just
there's a
shit.
game out there called Hatred where you just play as a
like
torture shooter, you walk around the town killing people.
Like Joe, that's the name of it. It's literally just to see unsuspecting people get tortured and die in gruesome ways. That's what they call them.
Are you talking about like a stuff film, or like wait?
No,
are we talking about video games?
Like imagine like slashers and shit like that. You know how you have slasher movies. Now imagine it's less a slasher and it's more like, instead of like it being like, oh, you're watching to get these people like just get caught off guard by like a killer. You're in it to watch these people get tortured and contorted and twisted. It's like the next evolution in gruesomeness of a slasher. It's like a branch off of that. Like these movies exist.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not literal torture porn. It's torture porn as a subgenre. Like there are games like that. Like you guys may have remembered this, but when they did the Tomb Raider reboot, like they had very extravagant death scenes where you watch her like die pretty brutally.
I remember that.
Like here's the thing. Here's the thing. I think, you know, it's a little visceral. I'm not going to ask for that to be censored. I get the feeling that somebody on the team, like, they're into that, and that's why some of them go on for like a little too long, in my opinion. But I will never say.
Yeah, they did linger on those scenes for like a long time.
But I will never ever say censor that.
Yeah, just pans back like.
Yeah, it's some of them go on, but there are games like that go even further. Like people like to say, "Oh, Mortal Kombat's pretty brutal. Oh, that Hatred game's pretty brutal. Oh, the Lara Croft." There are games out there that I've seen where it's literally like, I feel like this game was made just to have an hour and a half long death compilation on YouTube, and I don't care. Because that, just make that game. It's not for me. On the flip side, there are literal pornographic games out there. I don't think those should be banned or censored. They exist. Like, I'm just saying, like, I don't have a line, but when you say that you don't have a line, these kinds of people will actively look to find that line and cross it. That's why I always say it's like, you should be 90% absolutist in this. It's just, you say, I have a stance against censorship. You should not be censored. These games should not be censored. But I'm leaving myself that leeway, because when you come to me and you say to me like, haha, look at this. What do you think of this? I'm saying, yeah, fuck you. Get out of my, and you whatever. Now, but that's
check this shit out.
Exactly. But that's my stance on it. And to rewind for a little bit, censorship is something I harp on for two major reasons. Like I said, one, just not okay. Two, when you let these things go unchecked for too long, you end up changing the underlying foundation and creative culture. Everything we talked about, all this pressure, all like the games getting changed from the top down, you know, things that we've talked about in weeks past and things I just ranted about for the last 30 minutes, all of this signals that it's okay not just to censor things, but to cave to loud voices. And if it's done long enough, if creators and companies get poisoned and twisted long enough, you will just kill the roots of these industries and cultures, which is exactly what these activists and ideological nutjobs want. Because then it's not about obtrusive, blatant, or traceable actions against the natural process. It's guesswork and limited proof of manipulation. They want people to think the way they do so that just from the bottom up, they ruin it. Like, they don't have to act against you anymore. They want creators to know what the standards are and adhere to them, so that when you look at something and you say, hey, that's not the series I grew up with, hey, that's not natural, hey, that's not what I would expect from these creators, they can cross their arms and grin at you and go, well, they did it themselves. And that kind of culture is exactly how you end up with something like Guilty Gear, where somewhere between years of external and internal pressure, you have a ton of interviews all of a sudden where they talk about global sensibilities and modern standards and overseas audiences. Characters have sudden changes that don't line up at all with what you know about them. A lot of them look very, very different in a very deliberate and safer way. The game overall is softer and more consumable. It looks like a game that went through like a censorship process, but it didn't. It's just these guys, over time, they opted into certain cultural traits and they were subverted. And all of this is okay, because even though it's not what you'd expect from the series or the creators or everything, it checks all the right boxes. It was the developer's decision. It was the developer's decision. Pay no mind to the fact that, none of it lines up with their history. None of it is the same. It's very clearly watered down and made for modern sensibilities, and they say it outright. But there's nobody twisting their arm. They're just doing it. That's the kind of shit that censorship leads to if it's left unchecked. That's the kind of shit a lot of the stuff we talk about leads to if it's left unchecked. But censorship in particular, if the pressure is just laid on long enough, they'll make these changes themselves. It all comes back to what you pointed out before, where it's just like these people hate you and they want to change the culture and the things you enjoy. And that's my fucking.
It feels like we talk about this almost every time we record.
Because we did talk about it last time as well.
No. Last time we talked about localization. Very similar, but very different.
It's it's same but different, but still same.
Well, no, because censorship is general, changes that are like global. I mean, the standards for them are different. Localization is literally like someone makes a product and they do it in earnest, regardless of what censorship policies. A lot of the times, major localization changes are when there is no censorship. But localization is somebody else taking something that was created and changing it under these policies, but not necessarily changing it around a rule set. I know what you. No, I know. I know what you mean.
The thing, I noticed, and it was kind of funny. I was just thinking about it off the top of my head, but Anthony's played Conan Exiles. I don't know if you've ever played it, Dan, but
no,
have you? Do you know Ark? You know Ark Survival Evolved, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You ever played that? Or
I have.
No?
I did not last long.
Okay. Well, in Ark you tame dinosaurs and shit, and that's kind of a huge premise of the game. In Conan, and this is the hilarious part, you tame people, so. Because there's no dinosaurs to tame. So you just go out and you beat them over the head with a stick, a blunt object, and then you drag them to a wheel of pain while they're unconscious. And then what ends up is they're tamed individual people.
God.
And
I had no idea.
They're called thralls.
Well,
so maybe they should.
Real word.
Yeah, thrall.
And that actually,
I suppose that is what you would call them.
Well, listen. That's a good metaphor, because not only is that a metaphor for everything we just talked about with censorship in the industry and how they want people to think and act the way they do as if they are thralls. That's essentially what you are to the podcast, Joe, because you're not a real human yet.
Well, what I was going to say,
your right to be here.
There's absolutely no other word for what they could be.
Oh no. Of course not.
I just thought it was.
Oh my
I
God.
just thought it was kind of fucked up. Like
Indentured
that.
servants.
This game like flew completely under the radar for that very specific
But
facet of the game.
But here's the thing. That's the beauty of it. Just make these games. Who gives a shit? And
It's funny. No, it's funny because
they
they just didn't use the word, so nobody said anything about it, even though they're like obviously. Like,
I am pretty sure that there was some kind of kerfuffle about it. It just didn't go anywhere.
Was it really? I never even saw it. I mean, maybe I just.
That's what I'm saying. It didn't go anywhere.
It's kind of funny.
Well, just the concept of like how you go about taming these people.
Yeah, what you do is this is what happens is you go to a camp somewhere where there's like NPC enemies or whatever. You go there with a stick called a truncheon, or I don't know how you pronounce it. It's basically a one of those it's just a club, and you beat them over the head. Eventually they fall unconscious while they're trying to fight back. They lose, ultimately, and then you beat the shit out of them and they're laying on the floor. You tie them around the legs with rope, and then you drag them back to basically what amounts to like a sandbox with a big wheel in the middle that they push just endlessly until their will is broken, and then
You're breaking a horse.
Yeah, that's basically the premise of it. It's kind of
like real life.
Yeah.
So okay.
There's probably a lot more context, like from like the actual, like I'm pretty sure in Conan the Barbarian, like they did that to him, so that was like, but like I don't know why it's just weird that it kind of like flew under the radar to me, but.
What are these images that you sent?
Those are some comparisons of the censored. I figured I would just, while we had a second, I would just send them and show you how fucking small and arbitrary they are and why.
Yeah, if the arrows weren't there, I wouldn't be able to tell the difference.
Exactly. So like, why bother? Yeah. So that's that.
We were
also Battlefield is dead.
yeah. Battlefield 2042 is $2 more than Battlefield 1. I thought it was funny. I just thought I might share that with everyone.
Insane. Okay, so are we done talking about the censorship?
Oh yeah, we're done talking about the censorship.
Okay. I mean, it's nothing huge, but Anthony, I know you know this. I don't know, Joe, if you're into this, but like, how I love Killing Floor 2? You aware of this? Yeah. So Tripwire is starting to ramp up the marketing / hype machine for Killing Floor 3. They're dropping like new trailers of the enemy types, the different enemy types that we're gonna get in Killing Floor 3, and then the latest one, they had like 3 seconds of actual gameplay of the character fighting the God, what the fuck was it called? It's not the wow, I'm blanking already. I'm gonna look it up right now because it's a weird name. So there was the Sith reveal, the Scrake. That's what it was. At the end of the Scrake video, it looks really fucking cool. I can't wait.
Name Scrake.
Yeah, the Zeds are they were always had weird names. But
I think the last time we talked about Killing Floor, whether it was 2 or also the potential 3, and when it got announced, it was just like, I'm wary just because of how microtransaction-y and
the microtransactions in Killing Floor 2 are some of the most egregious I've ever seen in any game.
It's
crazy. Is not clear. Like if you were even willing to spend your money on any of it, I would have no idea where to start. Like it's so fucking convoluted. It's insane, and I don't know. But it's just fucking shame because the game itself is so much fun.
Yeah, we had tons of fun in Killing Floor 2. It's one of those games where it's like kind of like the way you were describing where Joe was kind of describing Mordhau, where it's like you can come back, play it for a stint, and enjoy it, and then move on when you're done.
Yeah.
It's always
Mordhau just never leaves like a bad taste in your mouth after you play it. It's good.
Yeah,
that's
really
like what Dark Tide is for me. Even if like I fail a run, I still have a good time just by solving the homeless problem on Tertium.
Like even if you don't play it after a really long time, it's like you come back to it, you play it a little bit, and it's just like, yeah, this game is just about as fun as I remember, and then you play it till you're you're either bored or you have something else to do, and and then you stop playing it. But it's like even if new shit particularly doesn't come out, it's always like a blast just because it's the same old experience and it's still fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I've said this ad nauseum, but I can't wait to see where Darktide goes, because Vermintide has gotten a plethora of updates, both like playable characters and weapons and maps and enemy types and modes, and they just never stopped updating it. Now they just got a PvP mode, so I can't wait to see where Darktide goes, and I'm all about 40k. So
yeah,
for now.
For now, shut up. I fucking
Speaking of,
those
like-
words left my mouth.
of like things like that. I just like, and like I said, I'm not gonna go on a too long of a tirade about it, but like we were talking about it before, like it was very brief, but we were talking about like Helldivers too, and like I feel like in the first time I joined you guys, I was like, man, I was having a blast with this game, and then like the more I played it, it's just like I'm not really having very much fun anymore, and it's like it
Do you
feels
play
like I'm
by yourself? Like on average, you play with other people?
both. I do both, but like in either
Not
case,
match made. Like you're actually talking to people as you're playing.
yeah, no, people I'm playing
Okay.
with, yes,
Okay.
yeah. I don't mess around with matchmaking very often, especially because the host system in the game is god awful, and
Yeah.
it's like literally if I am not the host, like there's like a 50-50 chance that someone will just like kick me at the end of the game, and I'm just
Are
like,
you aware of like the damage bug like that's tied to the
with the
host?
flamethrowers? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a
They haven't.
big problem.
It's been ongoing for like almost like 2 months now.
I know.
It's
Yeah.
kind of like they're. I don't know. It doesn't seem like maybe they like haven't expanded their team, which is kind of weird in my opinion. But
Well,
uh,
they came out and said like they don't want to hire on too many devs, because then they're gonna lose the vision of what made Helldivers, of what makes that game what it is, which I actually agree with. And Anthony and I spoke about this a few weeks ago.
They basically didn't want to overexpand, or you mentioned the vision aspect of it, but there really is like humps like this where you have technical issues that are ongoing. They suck, but long-term, I guess you could say, integral damage by just bloating the studio up would be worse than bumps in the road like this, in my opinion.
I'm perfectly fine with waiting and for them to fix core issues, because if, like you said, if they hire on more people and things have got to go through like 10 different fucking layers of approval, then the game is just going to end up dying a slow and painful death. So
even
rather
that, like aside, like never mind like the bugs and stuff, but it I feel like it's just for me it's like an issue of like just kind of the core gameplay loop, I guess. Like
I don't entirely disagree. I am of the opinion that I kind of wish the armor sets and the capes especially, I wish there was an alternate way to go about earning them instead of just buying them for medals, because I have 50,000 Rex in my wallet that are just burning a hole in my pocket that I have nothing to spend on. What?
The 50K club. That's what I just call it.
Oh yeah. This is why I like COD a lot more as far as like a progression standpoint, because I like the fact that you can go out of your way to hunt. Weapon camos are like the biggest thing for me, but you can also do like calling cards, emblems, charms, stickers are a big one that I like too. Like there's all these little tidbits that you can hunt for that take specific requirements that everyone could say that the cash shop is egregious, which it is, don't get me wrong.
Oh, absolutely.
But you can always go and hunt for something that's locked behind like a challenge, and that's been why I've liked COD for so long, because like you can go out of your way to show that you're good at a certain thing or you're really good with this one weapon. And a lot of games don't take advantage of player like playtime like that, and I just think that if Arrowhead implemented something that like you can unlock a certain cape, or you take weapon camos or charms or that kind of shit out of the equation, but there's armor sets. Why not lock something behind a challenge, or like kill X amount of bugs, or they even have player titles, or they even have the symbols next to the player name. That's all shit that you could, as a player, I would go out of my way to chase, because right now there is no reason for me to level. I have unlocked everything. It doesn't matter to me. Yeah, like the quirky little title under your name is funny and all, but it doesn't do anything. Like it's not flashy enough, I guess.
Right.
I will say that during my brief stint with the game, it did seem to be lacking in extracurricular unlockables. Like it really just seemed like here's a shit ton of weaponry that and other stuff that you need to unlock from a gameplay perspective. Here's the in-game store with a mixture of premium currency and regular stuff, and here is that was really it. It was just like you were going to need to unlock these things for gameplay purposes, and then outside of that it was like there was no customization, no kind of glamour kind of stuff. It really seems limited from that perspective.
Yeah, there's none of that.
I hate that it's not
here's
included.
The thing.
And don't get me wrong, the game is still fun as fuck. I really enjoy playing it. But take the Path of Redemption update for Darktide, for example. The penance system is like exactly what I wanted it to be. You go out of your way and do these crazy feats of like combat, but a lot of games just don't do that, and it like kills the replayability for me almost.
The thing about so in light of what Anthony was saying about like what you can unlock and shit, and like, so the thing is, Arrowhead has actually come out in 2 different interviews and said two things. That one, if you've seen leaked armor, there's a good chance that they probably won't add it. They haven't really said anything about customization for the most part. They haven't said a word about that, but they have specifically said that they are not adding transmog to the game, which is kind of funny because I've seen it was like a week or 2 ago, but I basically had seen like 2 articles in quick succession where basically Arrowhead was saying, hey, we're not doing this, and also we're not doing this. And I was like, so then like, what the fuck are you doing? But they said they're not adding transmog, which sucks. And I
mean, I'm in a game like Helldivers, I'm not really too concerned with transmog because the armor effects aren't big enough for me to want to change. It doesn't. That's a kind of a non-issue for me.
So that's the thing is the armor. Well, okay. Well, there's two points where this kind of like falls in. One, there is only like 5 or 6 different armor passives.
Yeah.
So there's not really that many of them, and they kind of rehash the same ones for like various different armor sets. So
it's very repetitive.
It's repetitive, and it kind of just leaves it like, why do they even want to exclude that when so many of them have the same passives anyway? It just kind of feels like an arbitrary sort of thing. And 2, wait, where was I going with that? Fuck. But so basically what Anthony was saying, like I said, he mentioned that they don't really have like a lot of use for like the currencies and stuff, and like from my experience, I played a lot. I got to level 50 or whatever, and then I kind of dropped off. But even with like relatively, I would consider like moderate amounts of play, considering the fact that I basically stopped playing. I like unlocked everything, and like you became part of the point where like you don't have anything left to unlock, so you just have like 50k Rex slips.
There's nothing to chase.
Right.
And now I have enough medals banked up in my in the game that once this new war bond comes out, the Polar Patriots war bond that just got announced,
you're gonna instantly unlock everything.
I'm gonna unlock everything, or most of it, and it like.
And when it comes to
cool
samples,
because I am looking forward to playing with this new shit, but but that's
and when it comes to new sample, like the samples and stuff, like you probably like, if you just kind of really go after the super samples and shit, like it's like you barely have to even try, and then you have like a fully upgraded ship, and it's just like, okay, well now I'm just sitting on top of this shit now. So like, and if you've played a little bit, you'll also know that super credits are pretty easy to get as well. So.
But I don't think they should be criticized for the super credit thing, because that's
no, absolutely not. It's not a bad thing. But what I'm saying, it's kind of a bad thing, because at the same time, what I was going to say was like, they have rotated the same like super credit, like the credit store stuff, like they've rotated in like 4 to 5 times at this point, because there's really not that many things in there. So like I'm sitting on top of a bunch of them, and I basically don't have anything to spend it on because they don't really have that much content in the game in the first place. But um, on a different level, what I was going to say basically was that like the it's more of like an intrinsic thing that kind of bothers me about it because like when we were talking about it, you said basically that like you don't really feel like there's like a lack of a reason to experiment, or like the game
Yeah.
kind of punishes you for experimenting. Like
Yeah, definitely.
they recently nerfed a gun that everyone had been using, the Quasar. And I was explaining this. Yeah, it is funny that they nerf it. Like I think nerfing things in a PvE game is kind
It
of
was
silly in
not
my opinion.
strong enough to warrant a nerf.
It,
Like, and to
it
add 5 seconds on that cooldown time is ridiculous with the level of the just the sheer
right.
enemy density they throw at you at the higher difficulties. It was that didn't need to happen.
Right. It doesn't need to happen, and but like that could be like in a subjective opinion. In any case, I think it's silly because it's a PvE game in the first place. But besides that, it's a situation where like, and this is what I'm saying. This is kind of the problem with the game is that they do really punish you for like experimenting, because the way armor works in the game is that like if you're not using a like the prerequisite like armor pen for whatever enemy you're shooting at, depending on the enemy, it's like they just walk around unchallenged. So
Yeah,
basically, and and,
fucking hate
and when
chargers.
right, so when not even just chargers, because chargers like you can kill from behind, but they are annoying, and like I was explaining that to Anthony as well. Like they're annoying to deal with, and, and granted, you can shoot them in the ass, and they'll like bleed out if you do that, or you can you know
Yeah,
burn them
but
with the
when there's
flamethrower.
4 of them on you,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
like
no,
there's no
exactly.
surefire way
It
to really dispatch them other than
you
airstriking yourself.
Right, right. They are melee enemies, so it's hard to hit them with stratagems, and you are punished for not using the correct support weapons. But even aside, like as chargers aside, there's also Bile Titans, and there's the other automaton enemies and stuff. Which, granted, some of them do have the big glowing vents and shit. But the thing is, Bile Titans are like, for the most part, like basically impervious to anything that isn't a rocket. So like when you're
Yeah,
doing like six difficulty and above, you run into Bile Titans. Now armor pen is basically a necessity, because if you're
not
not using a
even
shredded,
like because the armor penetration from the small arms weapons don't do fuck all against
yeah,
them.
it doesn't do anything. But and not even just that, like most of the support weapons don't damage them. It's like the Quasar, the recoilless, the
Yep,
expendable anti-tank, the spear. All of those
I
are
love
just
the
basic.
spear.
They're basically just bazookas, and
Yeah,
then you
yeah,
have
I know.
your stratagems. So it's like and that's the problem, is like at the expense of like the difficulty of the game, I want to say, like they're trying to make it quote unquote difficult, but the end result is I go into like 6 and above difficulty missions, and granted sometimes I do it solo, sometimes I don't, but the bottom line is like if I am not carrying a rocket, I can't. No one's going to be able to deal with Bile Titans.
Yeah.
So we have to take it in. So if it's not me, then it's somebody else. And if it's somebody else is carrying me because they're using the fucking rocket. And that is a fucking stupid way to feel. And the reason this is a objective fact is because people are going into missions with nothing but like a weapon like the Quasar. And this is why they're seeing the usage rates that they do. So they're seeing high Quasar usage rates because people are only taking the Quasar because they have no other way to personally deal with Bile Titans. So they're
Mhm.
using that on the Bile Titan, and the fact that the other weapons are absent doesn't fucking matter because their primaries do everything that the other support weapons could already do. And the thing is, I feel like when you take a look at Arrowhead, what they're going to end up doing is they're going to look at this situation, right? And instead of coming to the conclusion that like the other support weapons shouldn't be like dog shit compared to armor penetrating like rockets, they're going to be like, well, the I guess the primaries are too good, and then they're going to nerf those so that they're dog shit, and then you need like support weapons that deal with hordes of enemies, which people are just going to use stratagems probably for that as well. It's a stupid development loop in my opinion, and and I feel like a lot of it could really be solved by like making it so that armor just doesn't work the way it does, And like if you just take armor and you make it so that like you can leave the ricochets in because that's just all in the spirit of like the friendly fire and shit. Like your life is worthless, and you kill yourself with the shitty equipment. Like ricochets are fine. You kill your friends.
Yeah, I got
And
no
all,
problem with ricochets, but
right,
like
right,
have it have a damage threshold. If you put enough ammo into it, it should start breaking.
right,
That's what I think.
exactly. That's what I was saying. Like
Yeah,
if you did that, then I would try at least to use a gun like the heavy machine gun because like
right.
if you make it so that they damage armor to a varying degree, I would consider the heavy MG, or
A
I would
heavy
even
machine gun is utterly useless.
right.
Like the big
It's
one, not the regular machine gun, like
yeah.
the one that they added in after the fact. That thing is, uh, what a shame.
And I would even consider like using the light MG or the heavy MG, like just whether they buff
I
it or
think they
don't.
need to move the
That's
stalwart to the primary slot.
right.
That's my
Yeah,
opinion.
that's the thing is a lot of support weapons feel like primaries. They don't even really feel like they're strong enough to be considered worth a stratagem slot. But
Yeah,
the ultimately, like I said, a lot of that comes down to preference. But the bottom line is they're seeing these usage rates. They can see that, and what they're choosing to do is to quote unquote, make the game harder by making other guns less viable, which doesn't make sense because people are still just going to use the rockets. That's it. That's what they're going to do. So it's kind of silly, but people are starting to see that. Like I said, I was kind of ahead of the curve because now I can see that people are asking for the exact same thing and noticing that like, hey, I'm going to these high difficulty missions and they're using the same thing every single time. It's getting kind of boring. Which, by the way, we were talking about the armor sets before, and you said like they're mostly negligible. The thing is, and we it's funny that you mentioned that like the heavy MG is like a bad gun. One of the ways that people make the heavy MG like quote unquote viable is they equip that armor that reduces the recoil by like 30% or whatever when you crouch.
oh,
and I was and I was like, this is like that's like it's like you take like like the A10 Warthog. It's like if you
yeah.
just take that plane and like instead of like putting a minigun on the end of it, it's just like you just put like a water gun. That's like basically like that's like basically ultimately like what it is because it's like the heavy MG is not worth it to like accommodate it with like the rest of your build to try and make it good. Like I wish it was good enough for me to warrant like that, but it just isn't. But and it conflicts with probably their creative vision or something. And I want to like say that like to quote like I don't feel like the game is too hard or too easy. I feel like it's fine. It is still like a good like kind of fun game to play. I'm just saying that like it's it's like getting stale basically is the problem.
Yeah, no, I do agree to an extent. It does feel like it's getting stale. I will give Arrowhead credit though. Like they have been pumping out a lot of new shit every month, on like right on schedule too. But like without things to chase and without different things to earn, which I guess is another way of saying things to chase. Like, how many times can you go into a hell dive mission and uh have fun with it? I don't know.
The picture you guys paint, it sounds like the game has two major issues, and they're both located in the end game. One being things to collect and unlock, and the other one being how end game encounters are kind of balanced. It seems to me that
Yeah,
the game is currently balanced in a way that you would almost balance a survival game, where it's just like, okay, you make sure you have this piece of equipment and you make sure you have this piece of equipment so we can handle it. When it's really Helldivers doesn't strike me as a game that's really meant to be, or isn't sold as a game to be played that way, where it's just like if you don't have the right tool, you're just not going to win an encounter. It always seemed like a very attrition heavy game, and it doesn't sound like end game encounters are really catering to that.
I just
Yeah,
don't even. I just feel like I said, I feel like it's for me it's an issue of I'm not using the weapons that I really want to use or that I can't even I don't even feel like I can experiment if I want to like do anything higher than difficulty
Yeah,
6.
yeah, that's
And
what I was
and
getting at.
and if I
and
if I
then they
do,
did. Yeah,
I just get like I said, no, I just end up not being able to defeat enemies that I should be able to deal with, I guess.
yeah. The most recent patch or the most recent balance patch that they pushed out had this whole host of nerfs that just seemed like to come out of left field. Like they just didn't need to nerf some of the things that they did, like the crossbow, for example. Don't know why they hit that thing with the nerf hammer. It wasn't good to begin with. No one was fucking using it. And they lowered the blast radius and ammo count. I'm like, okay, it's not gonna affect anything. No one's gonna touch it.
It's funny because that the thing is they actually they didn't list it as a nerf as far as I'm aware, but they buffed Striders to make them less susceptible to frontal explosive damage, which affects someone like me who uses the Scorcher, because what I was doing was I would just shoot Striders in the front of like their armor, and the
Okay.
explosion would curve around the top of the armor and hit the rider in the back. So
splash damage.
so basically what they did was it was like it was a buff that indirectly nerfed every single explosive weapon in the game, including the Dominator, on top of the nerf that they also put on the Dominator directly. But yeah, they
I don't know.
see, the thing is and the thing is, like I said, I don't want to hate on these guys, but like one of them was just like they have this social media thing where they're just like they just come out after they push out an update and people aren't happy with it, and they're just like, hey, like basically fuck you, and they're just like, can't you see how many weapons we buffed? We buffed all these other weapons. Why, can't you see that we did all this? Like why are you complaining about this when we buffed all this other stuff? And it's like, well, the thing is, people weren't using those weapons because they suck, and you buff them, and like you nerfed the weapons that people like to use, or that they were using to, get through the game or whatever. And it's just like, I don't know. It's a real, like I said, I think it's a silly and kind of negative, bad, like, development loop. That's
I
really
think that
it.
the end game needs more work. I think that the weapon balancing is a different conversation entirely. But there will pretty much always be things that I like to gravitate to, even if it's not quote unquote on meta or whatever. But I just think the end game definitely needs something to chase. It's still fun. Like the game is a ton of fun. I haven't had this much fun with a game with friends in quite a while. But there's nothing to do once you unlock everything and earn everything. So it really kind of it dampens the enthusiasm level, because at this point I'm not going to go and play Helldivers by myself. I'm just not going to do it anymore. I was doing it when there was shit to unlock and earn, like the different stratagems and whatnot to unlock, where like I had to get past a level threshold. That's not the case anymore. So I already have 50,000 credits. I already have the max level to unlock everything. I already have all the weapons. So what's left to do? And
Right.
they branded the game as a live service game, so your job is to keep me engaged, and there's nothing else to chase. So I'm not, unless my friends want to play, I'm not going to play.
Pretty much, yeah. That's the bottom line.
So that's all I got to say about that.
Yeah.
Anyway, you guys got anything else you want to talk about while we're here?
I've kind of got one thing to pick your brains about. I don't know if you two have anything else that you wanted to bring up.
I don't think so.
No.
What do you got?
So it's, we've talked over the last couple of weeks, and I found myself saying this because there's always like a recapping moment, like I'm trying to rein it all in. I'm trying to say like, oh, don't forget the things we talked about before. But we've talked quite a bit about the industry and people involved and people who worm themselves in, and the vacuous modern audience they try to cater to. But there's like another like type of group that we haven't really touched on, or we kind of touched on a little bit. So,
oh boy.
Gentlemen, I ask you, what do you think about fandoms?
Oh God.
Fandoms.
Just like
we're like, this is a very long conversation we're about to enter into.
we don't
Oh,
have to.
man,
We don't have.
why?
We don't have to go nuts. I mean, they. What I'll say. What I'll preface is that like fandoms, fan groups, the very ravenous kind of online only types that like aren't even like. I separate fans and fandoms because fans is like you like something, you mean well for it, you want to see it improve, you want to talk with other fans to enjoy it. Fandoms are kind of like fiefdoms that like surround popular thing for like people to just kind of like create their own community around, and it almost always ends up corrupted in the long run. We don't have to go nuts about it. I'm more curious to see if it's something you guys think about. About when
I think it greatly depends on the individual franchise that we're talking about.
Yeah.
But I also think that the majority of quote unquote fandoms become more zealous than their own good, or like for their own good. More zealous. That's the word. More zealous for their own good.
There's definitely elements of that there.
And then you're also exposed to the online what's the term I'm looking for, like the online peanut gallery, that are people that care enough about it and feel strongly enough about it to take to Twitter and to write out like some stupid, either ill-informed or insensitive or toxic post that it's just like, shut the fuck up, man. The majority of times the fandom doesn't know what it wants until it gets something. So that's a loaded question, in my opinion.
It is. Like we could probably sit here for like a whole day if we really wanted to talk about it. I was more curious if because like I have a few short things to say about them, but
I think if you like, for me, if you enjoy something, like enjoy it, but don't over enjoy it, don't over consume it, because then you're gonna be shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah, that's kind of why I think there are multiple like when I say fandoms, I'm not even talking like it's not an umbrella term I'm using. When I say fandoms, I use it that way because that's how some of these peoples in these groups online will describe themselves as. It's the name of the company
that's even cringy.
Yeah, like there's like there's also the aspect of like when the wikis got bought out, the company that owns them is also called Fandom, and I think it just rolls together because that's where a lot of these people congregate too. I think like here's the thing, it's like me and you, Dan, we like Mass Effect. We're fans of Mass Effect. We would talk about Mass Effect. We're interested about it. We're passionate about it. But we're not like, we don't make it our identity, and we don't go online and try to change it, and we don't go online and try to use our like knowledge of the series and our history with the series to kind of like whip up like a little group that we control to like try and like
a level of personality that has nothing else going on in their lives, and that's a different thing entirely.
Yeah. Joe, it sounded like you had something to say. Did you have anything to say on this?
Well, I mean, I guess I thought it was like a super broad question, but I mean, if you in the context of like the wiki thing, I feel like,
well, that's part. That's just part of it. I'm just saying there tends to be overlap, and and when I say fandom, I wasn't referring to the conglomerate. I just think it's humorous that particular group that swept in and bought up all these things also attracts the same kind of people to the point where they overlap and they're essentially the same anyway.
Yeah. No, I guess I like it. I kind of like I agree with like both you and Dan. It's just like if people like they make it their whole like identity about something, but that goes for a lot of things. So I don't even know if I would necessarily say that it's like Go on. No, I was just gonna say like I don't even feel necessarily that it's like a fandom thing. I guess there's a lot of things that people do when they consider themselves like part of a fandom. I guess that are kind of like I feel like to an extent it's like the taking ownership of shit and then like I don't really know. It's really hard. It's really hard to say.
I love Mass Effect to the point where like I've bought so much shit from the BioWare store. Like, Anthony, you know those watches that I have, right? Yeah. Like you can't get those anymore. You can't buy them from anywhere. I looked online once a few weeks ago, maybe a few months ago, I only found one of the three that I owned, and it was going for like over $1,000. It's like they're serious collector's items, and at the time, like I bought each of them whenever they came out for like $500 a pop because I had the money. I really loved Matt. Like I was at the peak of my fucking Mass Effect fanaticism. But I never took to Twitter. I never wrote something that I think the game should or shouldn't have. Like that's a different level in my opinion.
Yeah, that's
borderline mental illness.
Yeah, that's pretty much that's my distinction. Like that's the distinction I'm trying to draw. Is it's no longer about being a fan of something. It's you have these people that make these games and series and stories and characters and like make that, like Joe, you said it perfectly, like they take ownership of it, because there's multiple ways you can take ownership of it. You could try to, basically say like, oh, this thing is basically me and mine, and so I'm going to I care so much about this that like I'm like I should be involved, and like they should listen to me and my demands and my headcanons and everything that I think about the game, and all the people that also like the game. Well, you don't like it nearly as much as me, so you need to listen to me. I'm an authority about it. Like that's an absurd thing that has just become like super commonplace in like the last 6 years, probably longer than that, but like in the last couple of years, it's to the point where like these people, aside from being just unhealthily obsessed with these things, they also are like posed as an authority, if not like in direct liaison to the fucking companies and like having their ear when it comes to certain changes, but in having like, going back to like the wikis and whatnot, is just like, if you want a quick refresher, if you just want to, kill time and read up on the lore, or if somebody's trying to get into it, like those are typically the first places they see. So they have like this power to kind of like influence and spread perceptions about these kinds of things. And I think it's nuts to me, because most of them, if you look behind the scenes, like those moderators, man, they're a special kind of like, they're in deep to certain things, man. It's pretty nuts. And there are two things that I kind of noticed, like, just because I don't go on them anymore specifically because of the fact that I don't trust them anymore. Like I used to go on the Silent Hill one. Dog shit now. That like that community is so fried, and those repositories are so fried. It's ridiculous. But like I'll go on a fighting game one. I remember going on the Tekken wiki once just for like a refresher for something, and I said, that's odd. Like the logo was like the pride flag, like the really super progressive one, and then I checked the fucking time, and I'm like, it's October. Pride Month was like half a year ago. What the fuck is this? Like they just never took it down. I remember there was like an edit war on like a Guilty Gear wiki, and like somebody strolled in like, hey guys, I'm a mod from a different website. I know nothing about either series, but I'll help you like moderate and change things. I'm just like, well, that's really fucking strange. It's almost like this weird group, like they're all talking to each other now. Like all these people that either don't care but just like the power, or care way too much and just want the power, are now talking in other groups with each other. Not just on the literal fandom sites, but in general. It's like, it's culty and it's weird, and I don't like it.
That's
all I have to really say. That's the, like we talk about like the rot that's like in like the companies and the creative process, but like the rot's in the fandom too. It's fucking everywhere. It's bonkers.
Yeah.
It's and like, don't get me wrong, I still have that positive attitude where things are going to get better. When and if things get better, and I always say that they will get better. It's just a matter of how much bullshit we need to get through first. But when things start turning, it starts in serious places like businesses, places of commerce, government, fandoms and fan groups and video games. Like that's last on the list. Like when things start turning around, we're gonna have to fucking buckle in, because these people are gonna dig deep into the most irrelevant to real life places, and they are going to make everybody as miserable as possible on the way out. And that's what I think about game fandoms.
And on that note, oh boy, that took a turn.
Yeah, Terrible people.
All right. Well, does anyone else have does anybody have anything else that they want to touch upon?
Joe, your probationary period grants you at least another 5 minutes of talking if you had something you wanted to say.
Well, I would say I recommend Mordhau if anyone listening has not tried it. I'm nobody paid me to shill. I just think it's a good game and I think you would have fun. That's all.
Moral of the
fair.
story is people stuck and you should play Mordhau.
Yeah,
People suck and you should play Mordhau. All right then. Well, I guess that wraps up this episode of the Pregame Network podcast. We'll be back in another 2 weeks.
Yeah.
To discuss games and things, and who knows what else.
We'll discuss some other nonsense going on, and we'll talk about how things suck, but also how things are kind of okay.
Maybe we can each find one positive story for next episode. That'd be cool. Fucking bumming me out, man.
We'll do what did we play, and also like what's a good thing that happened to you in the last 2 weeks?
No,
I didn't fucking kill myself.
A positive note.
I'll try and keep track of that Humble Bundle lawsuit. And then
always a net positive.
That's Joe's positive. It's like, oh, we're this much closer to Humble Bundle cratering.
Oh God. Okay. Well, thanks for listening. The 5 of you out there that are listening for right now.
See, you're talking about how we're down. You're just like, no,
what?
Nobody's listening. Goodbye.
You fucking put me in a depressive mind state. What do you want from me?
Jesus Christ!
This is all your fault,
Everything
Anthony.
sucks, and the industry is in a dark age.
Listen, I have consistently said, just about every week I say, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I want you to go back and watch the ending of every podcast we've done so far.
I don't have enough whiskey for this shit.
Shut the fuck up. I am talking. Get back in your corner. No, every time I always end it in a positive note. You just stick with the negative.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm the one that's glass half empty. What was your positive note? You ended on fandom, you psycho.
We almost ended on anal gate. That would have been a real nice positive.
And then I said, things will get better. I said it verbatim.
Okay. All right. Well, this has been was episode 6 of the Pregame Network, and we'll see everybody next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Jesus fucking Christ.